How's it going, everybody? I'm going to give my thoughts on Impact and Destination X in just a minute, but first there are a couple of news items I want to cover. The Sarah Stock situation has become a little more complicated. Apparently some Mexican website is saying that she's only had negotiations with TNA and hasn't actually signed anything. But Dave Prazak said on the Shimmer Wrestling Forum that he heard from Sarah Stock's own mouth that she has signed with TNA. And now the word going around is that there's some kind of paperwork issue that's holding up her debut. So, I don't know. You know, I'm fairly confident that she has signed with TNA. I don't see why Dave Prazak would lie. But if I had to take a guess, I'd say we might have to wait a while before she debuts. Oh, but in the meantime, to tide us over, we have Playboy model and former Survivor contestant Jenna Maraska on Impact Now. What the hell is this? Is it a joke? Because it's not funny. And the most depressing part about this is that Maraska has said that she's going to be wrestling in the Knockouts division once she's been trained. Once she's been trained? Are you serious? I don't know if anyone has explained this to Maraska yet, but training to wrestle takes a long time. I mean, it's months before you've got the basics down, and after that it's a couple of years before you've got enough experience where you get to a point where you really know what you're doing. What the hell is she going to be doing on Impact in the meantime? What is the Knockouts division going to be playing second fiddle to Maraska, just like they played second fiddle to all the Karen Angle bullshit last year? And look, I get why you signed her, okay? It's a publicity stunt. You're doing this to generate some publicity for TNA, just like you did with Pac-Man Jones and Sarah Palin and Rob Blagojevich and Danny Bonaducci. But Jesus Christ, how many publicity stunts does your company need? Okay, if the last few months of Impact are any indication, maybe you should put a little less attention on publicity stunts and a little more attention on producing a quality TV show. Okay, and this show is a perfect example. Alright? The announcing situation is just getting worse and worse. TNA and West just spend all their time fighting with each other instead of calling the show. It's incredibly distracting, and it really takes away from the matches. Plus, if the writers wanted one of the announcers to turn heel, it should have been Mike Tenay. Alright, nobody likes Mike Tenay anyway. Don West may have his share of critics, but even as a heel, that guy is more palatable than Mike Tenay. Mike Tenay comes off like an unlikable douchebag with a giant rod up his ass, and he always has. Next. Once again, every single match on the show is way too damn short. The main event of the show only went about 3 minutes. Yeah, 3 minutes, that's it. Of course, considering who was in the main event, that might have been a blessing in disguise. More on that in just a minute. Rhino. What the hell are they doing with Rhino? At Genesis, this guy was fighting Sting for the World Heavyweight Championship, and now all of a sudden he's getting beaten down by Sheik Abdul Bashir, who has been doing absolutely nothing and has been completely buried for the last few months. I don't think the writers have any idea what to do with Rhino at all right now. Is he still the leader of the front line? Is he still in the front line? I don't even know. I don't think they've made any mention of it one way or the other since he came back from selling the injuries at Genesis. What I do know is that 2 months ago he was competing for the World Heavyweight title, and this Sunday he's not even on the pay-per-view. Not that I'm really complaining that much about Rhino not being on the pay-per-view, I just think it's fucked up. And speaking of things that are fucked up, let's discuss the sequence of events that led to this week's main event of Kurt Angle's bodyguard Rocco versus Eric Young, who incidentally is another guy who's not even on the pay-per-view this month. First, Jim Cornette makes his case to Sting, explaining that there's a locker room full of young guys that are getting really pissed off because they're getting no TV time, and asks Sting to share his spotlight for once. He asks Sting, he says that Sting and Kurt Angle will both pick someone to represent them in the main event tonight. So, Eric Young goes to Sting and actually cuts a really good promo, telling him how hard it's become to make a name for himself, and he asks Sting to give him this chance, to give him an opportunity, just like Ric Flair once gave Sting an opportunity to make a name for himself. And he convinces Sting to give him a shot. Sting puts Eric Young over as one of the few guys in TNA that actually has this quote-unquote respect that Sting is always blabbing on and on about. So after Sting puts over Eric Young like this, it starts to look like this could kind of be a like a breakout match for Eric Young. Then it comes time for the main event. First, Eric Young and Sting come out to Sting's music. God forbid they come out to Eric Young's music, since he's the one who's wrestling, but no, they come out to Sting's music like Eric Young doesn't mean anything. Second, the match lasts all of 3 minutes. And it's lousy because Eric Young has to carry some ham and egger who's over 400 pounds and is so fat he can barely move. Third, no sooner does Eric Young win the match than Kurt Angle jumps him from behind, throws him out of the ring like he's the biggest jobber on earth, and then Eric Young completely vanishes from that whole segment. And why? Because they had to make more room for Sting and Kurt Angle and Scott Steiner and Mick Foley and Jeff Jarrett. And that's all well and good for those guys, but what does it do for Eric Young? Nothing. Doesn't do shit for Eric Young. What it does is give the illusion of putting Eric Young over, when in actuality it just buries him a little bit more. This entire angle came off like nothing more than a gigantic slap in the face to every young talent on the TNA roster, and it was a perfect reminder of why so many fans have been turned off by this main event Mafia storyline. It started out as a feud designed to use the veterans to elevate the young guys to the next level. But every single young guy that's been feuding with the main event Mafia, including AJ Styles and Samoa Joe, is lower on the card now than they were before this angle started. And it's exactly because of bullcrap like this. Now, one thing I did like about this show was the Ultimate X Rough Cut video. For the last month or so, it seems like TNA really has been making an effort to hype up the Ultimate X match at the pay-per-view. There's been a lot of videos for it, as well as videos hyping up the X Division itself. And that's good. That's a step in the right direction. The problem is these videos were either hyping the X Division in general as a group of people who are quote-unquote adrenaline junkies or high spot artists or whatever, and not bothering to focus on the fact that these guys are individual stars in their own right. And the Rough Cuts had the same problem. They were hyping up the Ultimate X match, the Ultimate X gimmick, the Ultimate X concept, but they never bothered to try to make us care about the people in the match. They didn't even announce the participants of the match until the go-home show. Like the match itself was more important than the people in it, which is absolutely asinine. But here, they finally did something to rectify that a little bit, even if it was too little too late at this point. They announced the participants, and we got serious worked shoot promos, except for the Jay Lethal one, from all the guys talking about their mindset going into the match. Alex Shelley said what he was going to do to retain his title. Consequences said he came to TNA to win the X Division title, and so on and so on. So now we finally know what the match and the title mean to all these guys. Which means that now we can finally care about the people in the match. And the more the fans care about the people involved, the more they're going to want to order the pay-per-view to see this match. Okay, instead of street fights and ladder matches and all that other crap, this is what TNA should have been doing to hype up the Ultimate X for the last month, and this is what I want to see more of. Now, as for Destination X, I'll give TNA this much. This is a pretty solid card on paper, and for the last several months, that has not been the case. Now, let's be honest, with Final Resolution, Genesis, and Against All Odds, the writers completely phoned it in. Bottom line. Okay, there were some good things about those pay-per-views, but overall, they were just half-assed. That is not the case with Destination X. The build-up has been greatly improved, there's a lot more intrigue, the card is much better this time, and there are some potentially good to great matchups on there. Now, am I going to order Destination X? No. And I'll tell you why. This is the warning shot. Under normal circumstances, I probably would buy this pay-per-view. But TNA has screwed over their fans with the last 3 pay-per-views and with the last few months of crappy impacts, so these really aren't normal circumstances right now. If they bring it with this pay-per-view, if they bust their asses, if they do the right thing for business and don't do anything stupid, if they deliver the goods with Destination X, they will have earned back some of my goodwill and I will think more seriously about ordering Lockdown. This is what I want to see happen. I want Sting versus Kurt Angle to be as clean as possible. Don't ruin it with tons of overbooking or the telegraphed Mick Foley heel turn that everyone's going to be expecting after the go-home show. I want it to be as clean as possible. I want Samoa Joe to completely obliterate Scott Steiner. It's not even a contest. This needs to be an absolute decimation. Joe needs to take Steiner apart in a really ugly, brutal, violent way like Steiner's never been taken apart before in his life. I want AJ Styles to beat Booker T decisively, and by that I mean I don't want to see some controversial BS finish where AJ somehow goes over but Booker T is completely protected. I want AJ to beat Booker T for no other reason than because AJ Styles is better than Booker T, because that's exactly what he is. I want everyone, including the veterans, to give 100% effort and work their asses off to entertain the fans. If they can accomplish these things, I will certainly recommend that people order the replay. If they don't, then I won't. It's that simple. And now that this video is done, I'm going to send an email to TNA telling them exactly why I'm not going to order Destination X, and I urge all of you out there to do the same. I'll see you in a few days.